Watch Duty at its core is really an alerting product or platform, right? So the same way that hopefully everyone uses Nixle in their county and signs up for alerts, we are also an alerting platform. The difference is a couple things. I mean, the big ones are one is we're not just text, right? So when you get texts, oftentimes the government will tell you, hey, time to evacuate. And you're left sitting there wondering, well, do I evacuate left or right, east or west? Where's the fire? Where do I go? Right? Like you need a better story arc of what is actually happening. And so
welcome to the All Things Wildfire podcast, where we delve into the latest trends and hot topics in protecting properties against wildfire. So sit back, relax, and join us as we arm you against disaster.
All right, All Things Wildfire Tribe. Let's welcome Mr. John Mills. And a lot of you may not know who he is, but you absolutely or very likely know what he's done. His app is called Watch Duty. The premier, I think, in my opinion, John, from what I've seen out there, the premier app for being able to send alerts when there's a wildfire incident. But I'll let you kind of introduce what else you guys do, and then maybe even talk about like where you came from, how you began to decide that you wanted to do this, and then let's talk about the growth, my friend. I think a lot of people that are listening are already using Watch Duty, but for you listeners that are not familiar, you're going to want to download this app. I promise you, because with the amount of wildfires that we're having in different areas, this is going to give you so much information that you're going to get it way faster than any news media can give you. And then you're going to be on the cutting edge of information. So, John, welcome, my friend. I'll let you jump right in to let us know more about you and what got you started with this passion to create Watch Duty.
Thanks for having me, LP. I appreciate it. Love the show. I'm excited to be here today talking to you guys. Well, let's start where it begins, right? So like many people who have been through fires, especially as just a regular civilian or resident of wildfire country, I live off the grid in Sonoma County. And my first encounter was a month after I bought my ranch out here. It was a nice day in November. I think it was November 19th. I still have photos and videos of it. All of a sudden, I see a helicopter flying over my house, and I just assume it's, I don't know, a training exercise. And then the next thing you know, another one shows up with a baby bucket on the bottom. Mind you, I don't know what a baby bucket is at the time. I'm just realizing that something bad is happening. And so little did I know about wildfire is that fire burns uphill. I'm down the hill from a fire. I smell nothing. I hear nothing but the rotor blades. And I start to realize, oh no, there's actually a fire here. And so that's the first time that happened to me. And then, well, to finish that story, all the Hueys cleared, their CAL FIRE Huey helicopters cleared. And then the Coulson C-130, Tanker 130 floor flew right over my house, opened the bomb bay doors. The red stuff fell on the hot stuff. And I was like, oh my God, my neighbor's ranch was on fire.
Wow.
So that fire was put out. 10 minutes later, it was over. I drove up there. There was no noise. There was 2 engines and it was all gone. Nothing on the news. I didn't know what was happening. I knew to expect the unexpected, but I didn't understand just how often this was happening to people. And so that was kind of the beginning of like, what did I get myself into? How am I going to survive out here? Right. I'm already living off the grid, making my own power, my own water and infrastructure. And then I realized, oh no, I'm really going to have to learn how to fight.
Right.
Accelerating that quickly, the next year, the Walbridge fire came in 2020, and that was the California fire siege when CCU and Mendocino that was the big one that really got my eyes opened. I evacuated for the first time. All my friends who were here with me during the pandemic had no interest in dying in a fire with me.
Yeah.
And so they got out of there. I stayed for one more day, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't know anything about wildfire. So I finished a couple of my configurations for my sprinkler system, my cameras. We can talk more about what I did to prepare myself after the first incident in 2019. And I evacuated to a friend's place in Santa Rosa. And that's when I spent all day and all night on the internet, on radios, listening to what was going on, trying to learn as much as I could in kind of a slow back-burning fire that took 8 days to get to the edge of my property until they finally put it out.
Wow.
And so that was my foray into this whole thing.
And so when you're doing this research and you're trying to get data and trying to understand what's going on, did that cause any? Is that where the light bulb moment showed up, where you're like, hey, this is kind of frustrating. I don't have enough information. There's not enough coverage on it. Like, what triggered you to decide I'm going to do something about this?
Well, it's a good question. I didn't know what watch duty was going to happen yet. What I did understand, though, is that from all the websites and Twitters and Facebooks and everything, I was trying to find information. I realized that the best intelligence actually came from these intrepid radio operators who were standing up Facebook and Twitter community pages that ended up disseminating that information. And that's when I realized that actually the best intelligence came from the radio transmissions. But it wasn't until much later that I actually figured this idea out, right? I was actually retiring from my last company, which I just sold. And then for the next couple months, I was working with wildfire startups, riding in fire trucks, working with my GIS people in my county, working with the radio people in my county for the radio dead zones where first responders couldn't talk to each other. I just kept digging and digging and digging. And I was like, what is going on here? How can I help? And so it took me a while to connect the dots and realize that, like, this is where I can apply my talents to this specific area. The other areas I was unable to fix. So that's kind of how it happened. It wasn't overnight, but it was an amalgamation of incidents that made me do this.
I think that is so cool. I think in life, oftentimes we think that we're after a certain, track, or we're going over through a certain career, but little by little, you learn, you bump into stuff until after a while, like the Red Sea opens up, like boom, here it is. Like here's the alignment, right? And that's got to feel so good. I think a lot of people give up, on that journey of trying to figure things out. But I think that's awesome that you found this opportunity, and I call it an opportunity to create something. But man, what a great value you've created to people. So I think there's a lot already that you've given to the communities and to governments even as well. But really quick, John, like you said that you sold your company before. What kind of company was that you sold?
Yeah, so a lot of my career has been in Silicon Valley software. Before that, ironically, I grew up in a wood shop. My father was a tech entrepreneur or intrapreneur. He was at IBM for most of his career. And so I grew up having a computer and having a wood shop. And so he was restoring houses, building things, climbing in the crawl spaces to pull the Romex wire, because my dad was not thin enough to be able to do that. And so I learned how to...
contractor, man. Come on.
I learned how to restore and build things. And then when I wasn't allowed to touch the power tools, I would then hack on the computer. And so a lot of my career has been kind of around machinery and equipment. And now I do that for a living. But computers allow me to make money. And my hobbies are using my hands. So what most of my career has been focused on is really building technology for underserved markets, quote unquote. If I use that term, really it's underserved people. My last company was essentially like a food service operations software. So it was in like every Chipotle in the world, every Sweetgreens, Tim Hortons in Canada, Burger King all across the world. And so all these different organizations are trying to provide a safe fast food at scale. And so that takes repetition. And so we help them with back of house operations, from like food safety standards, internet connected devices to help them like for example, when we met some of these organizations, they were like having someone walk in the refrigerator 5 times a day to write down the temperature. I'm like, how about we just automate that and it'll tell you when it's broken at night? And they're just like, their minds are blown, right? So we're providing software and services to industries that don't get help. And I feel that this is the same, right? This industry, quote unquote, if you can call it that, doesn't get enough help from great software entrepreneurs and engineers. And so that's really why I do what I do is building what should have existed. I'm less focused on like Bitcoins and blockchains and more focused on like what should have happened a long time ago. And so that's my pleasure to do that now for this world.
I think what you bring to the table is very unique. Like you said, you worked with your hands in helping your father in construction. So to me, that's blue collar. But you're also a very techie person, right? So that's a tech nerd. So I see you as a blue collar tech nerd in the most respectful way. I wish I was a tech nerd, right? To me, it's like, that's amazing. And so it's cool because, it sounds like you've been doing this all your life. You started with your father and you're trying to do your thing, and then you're on the computer, and then you do this other company where, hey, these companies are struggling because they don't understand technology. They don't know what they can do to automate and innovate and reduce their expense and win better. And now you're on the fire trucks, you're jumping around from place to place, trying to figure out, like, blue collar wise, boots on the ground, what's taking place, talking to people, and then you decide, boom, let me put my tech to work, and you created Watch Duty. I think that's pretty awesome, man. Like
Thanks.
this is just part of who you are in your body, man. I think that's, congratulations for finding your niche, man. Like, and I don't think Watch Duty is the end of things that you're going to create. I think that you've got the ability to do a ton more if you want to, right? If you want to. I know you're living off the grid and you want to be on your own and stuff. So I don't know how that's working out when, like, people keep calling you and gravitating towards you, and you're like, good God, people, leave me alone. I don't know if that's how you feel, but I think if anyone wants to get off the grid, they're like, I want to be in my, calm place.
It's a yes and, we love hosting people here and having events and hosting our fire departments. And we work with a lot of different organizations, which I appreciate. Personally, I donate a lot of money to other charities, and honestly, I like blue collar a lot more than many other things. I actually just wanted to get away from Silicon Valley, not get away from people. So a lot of my time is spent with, ranchers and cheesemakers and firefighters. And it's great to be around such different, diverse opinions of thought and adversity, rather than the usual conversation is, what type of tech are you in? It's not as interesting. It's like, again, what type of cheese do you make? What are your passions and hobbies? And so I really appreciate the differences of opinion up here and careers.
Fantastic. Now, John, you guys, like you guys have grown tremendously. I just saw some data, I think, on LinkedIn, and it was 4x that you guys have grown from last year to this year. That is incredible. But you've also, I think, been able to elevate your game continuously with adding more features to it. Can you talk about the growth and the things that you're adding to it?
Yeah. We just released our annual report yesterday, which is really fun to do. I spent about a month writing it and getting all of our data together. What we're trying to do is practice radical transparency. And, as I mentioned in my report, like, there's nonprofit 501c3 tax obligations that you must file a Form 990 and show your books. We're trying to go above and beyond that, not only to show our donors where their money goes, but to show the world that you can build successful nonprofits that help people and pay, the employees well and have a really good impact on the world. And so my hope is to use what the government's given us to really show the world that we can be successful, stand on our own 2 feet, and not be looked at as a charity, right? We also provide we provide services to people and governments. And so we're really proud to announce that Google.org just gave us $2 million in funding. Membership dues, which are $25 a year if you want to become a member of our nonprofit, has funded $2 million of our budget as well, about $500,000 in regular donations, and it's really taken off. And so we've 4x'd our growth. We raised 4 times the amount of money this year. We have 7.2 million yearly active users this year, which is also up 4x. We did 500 million page views, and we're also publishing that as well. And so we're really excited just to like open the kimono on what we do, how we do it, so people know that their money goes somewhere extraordinarily valuable outside of what they can see in the app. Behind the scenes, we are helping governments and first responders and people who can't afford to be members, right? We only have about 2.5% of our user base is a paying member, and that's fine, right? We don't need much to be able to do what we do. And so it's an honor to be supported by our members who see value in this and realize that like every dollar supports almost three users, right? It's about 34 cents a user currently. And so if you pay $25 to become a member, you're supporting 75 people getting a free membership or a free access to Watch Duty with no ads, no sign up, no spam, no nonsense, right?
Man, congratulations on all of that. The fundraising, the donations, the users. That's incredible. And look, we use your app and it is full of so much information. For those, John, that are not familiar with your app and they're going to download the app, what's the easiest thing, user-wide for them to understand and how it's going to serve them?
Yeah, Watch Duty at its core is really an alerting product or platform, right? So the same way that hopefully everyone uses Nixle in their county and signs up for alerts, we are also an alerting platform. The difference is a couple things. I mean, the big ones are, one is we're not just text, right? So when you get texts, oftentimes the government will tell you, hey, time to evacuate. And you're left sitting there wondering, well, do I evacuate left or right, east or west? Where's the fire? Where do I go? Right? Like you need a better story arc of what is actually happening. And so Watch Duty, simply put, is giving you the story of the ignition to extinguishment, right? So the fire's over here. It's burning to the west. It's, heading over this hill. They just ordered 10 engines. And so you have a story of what's going on. So when it is time to go, you have some clarity as to what has happened before you get the magical ticket to evacuate. You understand, oh, I should go east because the fire is going the other direction, right? Whatever it may be. And then on top of that, we obviously have maps and visuals and whatnot to connect the two together, right? Because not all of us like word problems, and so, and some people are really bad with directions. So if you can look at a map and see your blue dot, know your evacuation zone, you don't have to know your zone anymore. I don't have to know what to do. I can look at it and say, okay, I'm going to drive out of my driveway and go east, rather than like really having to like think really hard, especially when cognition goes down, when you're freaking out about fire coming, right? So how do you like think about the user experience of this? So simply put, we're just a better, well put together evacuation and emergency warning platform for wildfire currently.
Love that. And so a lot of our clients, one of the first things that we do is say, great, download this app. This is what's going to keep you aware of what's going on. And a lot of our clients use it. And so our technicians, our firefighters, they all use it because, like you said, it gives you a lot more data than just text. You're even showing the wind, right? The direction of the wind, the speed of the wind, all that is really great information to have so we can understand best, okay, how can we instruct the homeowners on where they're most vulnerable right now. So we love using that app. There are other apps out there, and I'm not bashing anyone. I'm sure they're all great. But as far as, your ability, we talked, when we met in person a few weeks ago, I know there's new things coming, and you sounded excited about we got stuff happening and we're going to be even more robust. And what can you share about some of that, the future things that are going to be taking place?
Yeah, there's really a lot. I mean, let's start with, what's happening for the citizens, right? I mean, because we do serve first responders as well, and we're building a lot out there also. But in terms of wildfire, I mean, as a whole, we still have some more data sources to bring in. We have luckily achieved our goal of being the one-stop shop for wildfire. We just got the Alert California, Alert West camera networks in, which was kind of the final straw for us of like actually doing what we set out to do. Is like,
Nice.
don't make me open 15 browser tabs to figure out what the hell is happening.
Yes.
Right? We've all been there. I've been evacuated, been in fires, trying to figure it out, and so now I have it in the palm of my hand. So that mission was accomplished. A lot of things we're doing are actually behind the scenes. Much better infrastructure to do what we do. We just added 8 new states. We haven't announced that yet, but I'll announce that here. So we're pushing all the way to the Mississippi and eventually going farther east. We are working with a lot more other partners and sensor companies, some of which will be announced soon, to get more imagery into the system, imagery and signals essentially into the system. And then, of course, we're looking to the future of what does it look like when the Earth Fire Alliance fire satellites go up? What does it look like to work with companies like Aurora Tech and others? And so we're talking with a lot of those organizations right now about getting more and more imagery and information into the system. And then, of course, there are still things that we don't have. For example, like which we're adding this summer is, this winter for the summer is all the wind and barometric pressure gauges, RH, humidity, all that type of information.
Wow.
We want to have in there as well. We'll also start adding in the forecasting, most likely to help, especially for wind is kind of the big one, because as we know, when the sun rises and sets, wind starts to shift and fire behavior changes. So all those things are important for fire. And then the really exciting thing is, which we alluded to in our annual report, is the company is not called Fire Duty. It's called Watch Duty, right? And it's about citizens who are on watch, being able to provide this intelligence to the masses. And so with that, later this winter, we will be releasing all of the flood and river gauges across the West. And then, of course, that expands into air quality. That expands into tsunami gauges and buoys, which we just experienced recently with that false alarm of the tsunami. You think about the other disasters that are happening, the similar things happen. You get an alert, you get freaked out, there's very little follow-up, you're on the internet, you're calling your friends, the WIA alert tells you to run for the hills. The next thing you know, you're like on a hilltop, and then, you find out it was a 5-foot swell. I'm not saying don't listen to the government. I'm saying like we need better ways to confirm and look at data from this and say, hey, here's ground truth and what's going on, right? Like that's the important part about what we do. And so Watch Duty isn't really in the prediction business. We're in the business of what is happening. And so if you live on a river, for example, which happens to be right near me, the Russian River, I have friends who live on that river, and some live at 28 feet above, the water, and some are 35 feet above the water. And so you're really tired of the weatherman telling you this is the worst storm of the century, everyone prepare. And you're like, I've heard this before. Can you just let me know when that river gauge hits 32 feet? Like, just tell me that, right? Don't make me look for it. Don't make me go to the NOAA website and keep refreshing the browser, which is what we did in fire. And so we think about all the data and information we have out there. How do we put this all in one app and make Watch Duty the platform for natural disaster, right? Is really our goal. And so that's really what we're coming to next.
Man, that's powerful. What's interesting is, I think it goes back to your kind of like what I'm calling your origin story. Like you're doing something, you're bumping into stuff, you're doing some good stuff, and then it's like, hey, there's some more opportunity here for you to serve more people, and great, let's open that up. So I really love that, and I think about with our firm and being able to help people against wildfire and embers. The clients that have been calling us are the insurance brokers and the insurance company saying, hey, can you please help my homeowner? Great. And as a contractor, the conversations kept coming up like, hey, we also install water shut-off devices. And they're like, oh, you install water shut-off devices? Yes, we do. Great. We also install earthquake valves. Oh, you do? So now it's more of a risk platform that we're actually working with. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing, right? You're like, you start off with wildfire, but you realize there's so much more risk out here. And now you're really helping homeowners to be able to have this Watch Duty app to help them with all the natural disasters and the risks that they have for their property. I think that's that's a really a gradual growth, and I think it's going to be even more powerful outside of only wildfire. So, man, you're going to continue to grow, my friend. Like you already see it coming. Like, okay, next level, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. As my friends tell me, it's a growing industry, and I really hate hearing that, right? Like, it's just not like, this is not what we want. But it keeps both of our organizations busy, and it feels like it's how we help, right? It's how we cope by doing something about it. And that's what I remind people. Like, this is my favorite job I've ever had, the best industry I've ever been in, with some of the most fascinating, selfless people I've ever worked with, because it's how we deal with these problems and how we do something about it, rather than sitting and complaining and worrying. I'm like, I have to prepare and learn how to do something. And so all my teammates are like this. I mean, all these radio operators were doing this many years before I moved to wildfire country. And so that's what we have in common. We've taken it upon ourselves to do something about it and take accountability for what we're going through.
Love that. You know, you spoke earlier about adding this forecasting model. I know you guys are not a forecasting app or company, but I had a client send me an email yesterday and said, "Hey, OP, our home in the state survived the Malibu fire that just took place with the help of your spraying fire retardant early in the season, and then they had firefighters there attending, and there were some small little flare-ups in the area, but they're very grateful that their home survived." But they said, "OP, with what took place, we're still very concerned about the wind events that could be taking place for the next few months. Do you recommend that we spray again?" And before I answer that question, I went and I looked at the data and said, okay, what's the weather look like? Because with fire retardant, it'll wash off with water. And I'm like, okay, it's going to rain. Let's wait, right? But as I'm looking through the forecast, I don't see any rain. I could only go out 10 days. I'm looking at the wind, and I could only go out a certain amount of days. I'm like, okay, I don't have enough data here. And maybe 10 days is the max, but I'll ask you, will you guys be able to kind of help stretch that timeline out to kind of show, it doesn't have to be accurate in my mind, just some predictions as to, hey, what does December normally look like? What does January normally look like? What can we put together on that? So no pressure on you, but I'm just curious about, the client came to me and I'm like, I don't know where else to look,
Well, I'm not a meteorologist, if that wasn't clear. So it's kind of a challenge to really, and I try and stay in my lane as much as possible, which people will say, well, you don't know anything about fire. You're clearly not staying in your lane, but I know even less about weather. So it's hard really to predict, as we know, and being a weatherman is one of the few jobs in the world where you can get it wrong half the time and not get fired. We need them, obviously, but I understand the challenge that they have, and we have no way of solving that problem. But, the way I look at this is there is no normal anymore. You said normal. Well, it hasn't rained in SoCal in a while. We're getting some, different weather patterns that we don't normally get. And so normal is, I don't know what normal means anymore.
That's a great point. That's a great point for anyone who lives, I think, in any city or state. The normal weather pattern is there is no more normal. You don't know what to expect. Completely agree.
Yeah, so we just got to prepare, right? And we do the best that we can, and that's how I look at this. I mean, I personally don't use any retardant and things of that nature to try and pre-prepare. I have closed eaves, I have fire sprinklers, I have clearance around my house, I have all sorts of stuff that I've built. That's the most that I can do. I also live in Northern California, so I don't have the same problems that SoCal has. I mean, that Franklin fire was horrible. The Woolsey fire was pretty late, however many years ago that was. And then the Marshall fire in Colorado was right around Christmas a year or two ago. I mean, it's crazy to see what's happening here. So I think it's got to be prepared all the time at this point.
Yeah, nothing beats home hardening and defensible space. Absolutely. That's a foundation of how to make sure that you're at least protecting yourself from embers and ignition. So that is absolutely the message that people need to hear. Now, John, let's talk a little bit more about how first responders are utilizing your app, and then how are you collaborating with them? how are you guys working together to increase the efficiency of what they want to see?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's really been exciting for us over the past several years. I mean, when we first showed up, we were, just an app, quote unquote, for residents of fire country. We didn't understand what this was going to become yet, mostly out of just sheer naivety, right? I didn't know that first responders didn't know all this information either. And so after a couple of years went by, we started to meet tanker pilots, dozer operators, engineers, chiefs. You'd all tell us that they all were using watch duty. And again, naively, I assumed that they had everything that they needed. And so that is not the case, especially for out of county, right? In county, it's a little bit easier where you have your radio, your pager system, that works. There's a veg fire, you get a call out for it. You know that, right? What is interesting, though, is that even in that county, you can miss radio transmissions. You don't know about, the IROC resources that are getting called out from out of county. So you start seeing all that written down. It actually helps you have almost a log of it. But really where it comes into fruition is out of county, right? All of a sudden you see 2 counties over, someone ordered 50 strike teams. You're just like, oh no, I'm getting called in. I don't know what's going to happen. Drawdown's happening. I get another ignition in my county. Bad things are going to start happening, right? And so it starts to give a better picture as to what's going on around you. And I think that's what's really kind of begun to change the way that firefighters look at us and our system. And what's really been exciting for us now, and this is I'm happy to announce here, is that we have a bunch of counties who are working directly with us to have us power their wildfire maps for their citizens. So we're in talks right now with Orange County, Ventura County, LA County, and I think San Diego is also interested in just that, is that we are going to be running the maps on their website, which is kind of wild. I didn't see
what does that mean
anytime soon. Yeah. So if you go to Orange County Fire Authority, for example, they have their own map of what's the fire activity in their county. Well, they want us to power that now. We're already doing that in Idaho. So Idaho Public Lands, we run their fire maps. And so more and more and more people are coming out and saying, you know what? We trust you now. You guys are doing the right things. We work closely with you. We watched you for years. And they believe and know in their hearts that we are here to serve and not charge anybody for anything and do the right thing at all costs. And so it's really starting to show that we work with these organizations. And now we're having deeper talks with BLM, U.S. Forest Service, and others, because they're understanding that, what the value of providing is above and beyond what they're able to do. And rightly so, because they should be putting the wet stuff on the red stuff, not sitting there trying to listen to radios all day long while dispatching equipment and apparatus. And then there's the sad reality of the FEMA ICS structure is old, it is antiquated, how PIOs have their hands tied, it sucks. I feel bad for them. Like a lot of them now are just able to go on Facebook and Twitter and start posting, which is awesome, right? That at least they can do that while they're trying to get the sheriff involved to put a WIA out or a Nixle out. You're like, man, this fire is a critical rate of spread. I don't have time for this. And so we're able to do things that the government is unable to. And now they are understanding that we are here to help and work with them. So it's really been quite an honor to get to do that and really have their trust to do the right thing.
I love that. I think having been exposed to fire departments and some government entities, as a business owner, entrepreneur, those entities move very, very slow, way too slow for me. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a massive problem. Can the communication get faster? Can the red tape be cut? Can we get there? And you had to have gotten frustrated by not being able to bridge that gap. But it sounds like persistence, brand reputation, doing the right thing over a certain amount of time, because people are watching, whether we admit it or not, people are watching, right? So over a span of time, you've been able to create this rope of trust And it sounds now like they're giving you more and more ability and access. And that's so exciting because there really needs to be a lot more integration with private companies, government agencies, 501c3s like you. Like they all need to integrate for the messaging to be unified versus fragmentation. Because to your point, when a homeowner is experiencing some sort of a disaster, cognitive thinking is out the window, and so now we've got to dumb it down. Like we got to keep it as simple as possible. Don't make people think too much, because that's what's going to save lives, is being able to meet them where they are, which is keep it simple, man. So I can help myself and help my family. So, yeah, again, I'm proud of what you've been doing, man. It's awesome.
Thank you. And to the government's credit, move fast and break things is a Silicon Valley mantra that doesn't work in the fire service, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not the right way to do it. That said, we should move a little faster, right? Like, I understand, like, the government, I honestly don't want the government to adopt some of the things that we do in the for-profit world, but we should be able to get rid of some of the red tape and the nonsense that does prohibit them from moving quicker and adapting. And that's the part that's really hard. And so I feel for these people that can't get through it, who know better, they know what the world needs, and they just can't get the powers that be to pay attention. And that's got to be frustrating for them. I just went around it, made a nonprofit, solved it from the outside in, and pushed my way in, because I tried asking and I got a bunch of stone walls and nonsense. So I had to go on my own and figure this out.
Thank you for doing that, brother. I love that.
Yes.
So John, look, there is a pro series that you have on the app. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like, what that does, and what people get with that?
Yeah. So the professional version is a little more expensive than the basic membership version. And it's really built for first responders, emergency managers, telcos, power companies, other folks that have men, women, and equipment in harm's way during a disaster. And so some of the features that are there now are jurisdictions, state, local, federal jurisdictional areas. Private land ownership is actually helpful to figure out who owns what, where, to find the right person to get the gate code. Otherwise, the bulldozer master key usually takes care of that gate. But there's a bunch of different things that these organizations need, whether it's power utility poles, transmission lines, things of that nature, or like things that first responders are needing to get through this predicament that they're in. And so that's where this really all began, is the ability to help them. And so one of our largest customers is PG&E, who bought thousands of licenses. They've been super helpful to our organization and donating to our nonprofit, which then in turn makes this free for everybody. So it's great to be able to get the support of these organizations, help them, first of all, which we love doing. We do that extremely cheaply. There are products and services that they buy that are much more expensive, that do less than we do, right? And we don't brand it PG&E or anybody else. As much as I love, these companies that are super helpful, this is about the citizens. So we don't have advertisements for fire hoses when you're running away from a fire, for example. It's a little too late to get a fire hose, right? So we really want to keep this thing like clean and branded and simple. And so these organizations actually help support it, but we support them, right? And so some of the cool features we have coming are like, one of the biggest things these organizations need is they need the ability to upload their own infrastructure into WatchDuty. And so whether you have cell towers, power poles, railroads, substations for power, whatever it may be, they want to see that in WatchDuty. And so they're asking us now for the ability to overlay their infrastructure on top of ours. And so, and again, we do that extremely cheaply and a very easy way to do it. And it's democratized. So at first we thought we were going to be selling data to these organizations, saying, hey, let's give you the lat long and some of the information coming out of WatchDuty, and you can overlay it into your, usually Esri, GIS products, for your emergency operations center, where a bunch of men and women are sitting around in a room watching the world burn while they're trying to radio their team to move equipment, do whatever it may be. And turns out they actually want it in the hands of the end users who were in the field. Linemen and women who are actually out there doing this work don't have access to that information, right? They get screenshots and text messages, right? Or these clunky ass mobile products that are not any good. And so now we've realized that like actually what's happening is the opposite. So now we're putting their data in ours and giving some information to them so that we can now cross-pollinate these pieces of infrastructure together. And so we're really thinking about what it looks like to actually work as a team to help solve these problems at its most basic level. And then thinking about first response in general, like the fire services, if you're at an incident command post, you see the big map, the IAP maps, and there's a little QR code in the bottom. Well, we're going to make a way to scan the IAP fire service maps right into Watch Duty, right? So we found that we're in everyone's hands. How do we build some of those features from these other tools that are more expensive, costly, or really you just want like one or two features from those products, not everything, not the whole thing, and build it into one. So we're really trying to be the one-stop shop for fire service emergency managers and professionals who are dealing with this. And that's really our goal with that professional offering.
Boom. And for you listeners out there, if you have not downloaded Watch Duty yet, number one, please do that. Number two, if you feel inclined to, please donate, right? We've got the professional series. Vincent, make a note, man. We'll make a donation too, man. I really appreciate what you're doing, brother.
Appreciate that.
So to you listeners, like, I hope you can feel the passion of what John's bringing to the table in his experience from the past to now, and then even in the future, what he's continuing to build, so we can be able to better support him. And look, John, I hope this is okay to say. If not, I can delete it. But John does not pay himself. Like, he has not paid himself yet. Like, I told him before we got on, like, yo, bro, you need to get paid, right? Like, this is so, like, I'm sure the people that work for you get paid. That's great. But I think, there comes a time, brother, where, like, you got to make some money, right? Like, you got to get paid for what you're doing. And I know that this is a passion of yours. But I think everyone who's been able to enjoy the app would be surprised to know that you haven't taken a paycheck. So I think from all of us to you, my friend, 2025, let's put something in your bank account,
Well, every donation dollar helps. And so I will start paying myself a little bit of money this year, which is great. I ran it, been running it obviously for, I guess, 4 years now. And I did put $1 million of my own money into it.
Wow.
To make sure that this worked, and then hired my friend out of my last companies. And it was important to do that to make sure it was going to survive. Like, once we built this thing in 80 days out of nowhere and launched it, and it just exploded. And after a year, I'm like, all right, this is my future. This is my job. Let's make sure I have one. And so now I think it's safe for me to make a little bit of money. But my team is the important part of this organization. There are times where, like, I'm in town and the Watch Duty alert goes off and the whole town square will ring, and people who know me, they're like, what's going to happen? You're here. I'm like, I'm not on the radio, man. Like, this is, like,
right.
I had to remind people, like, when we're not doing what we're doing, we're also in town trying to enjoy our lives, being in the country and the wildlands where we want to be. And, knowing that our, colleagues are watching over us, is really moving, honestly. It just blows my mind that these people been doing this for so long. And now a lot of them are careered salaried employees. So, many of our volunteers showed up. They were just volunteering. I mean, they were just doing this on their own. And, like, sometimes community members would give them money and do GoFundMes for them. But now a lot of them actually have full-time careers here. And so we really try our best to make sure that we can actually make a career. Like, how many ham radio operators get careers doing what they love doing, And so it's really cool to be able to have a career path for these people and give them a livelihood so they can continue doing this work. And then, when more volunteers want to show up, there's a pathway for them to become employees of the company. It's really an honor to do that and make a livelihood out of this profession.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, John. John, is there anything that you would like our listeners to know before we wrap this up?
Yeah, just know that, we really want to work with everybody in this space, especially our government officials. And so it's important that, you listen to them as best as you can. Their alerts I still have. I use PulsePoint, I use Nixle and everyone else. And it's important to realize that more is better. And God forbid, something happens where PulsePoint doesn't work or Watch Duty doesn't work. Knock on wood, it hasn't ever gone down. But it's important to have belt and suspenders. This is life and death. This is not like, oh, Uber didn't work, I'm going to call a Lyft, right? Like it's a little different problem.
Right.
So it's really critical to have belt and suspenders in this situation and really be prepared. And hopefully you never need it. That's the goal, right? I like to remind people that Watch Duty optimizes for time in life, not time in app. And it's really important to, again, listen to all the officials, including us and our official sources that we have. And
Very
if you
important.
like our service, please donate, become a member. It helps us continue.
I love that.
Work.
I love that. I think the belts and suspenders comment. I don't know if people know what suspenders are, but like I got this picture in my mind. I'm like, seriously, I wear a belt, but now like you're taking on the suspenders. I'm like, man, oftentimes we don't want the two things, but it's important, right? It's important to have multiple access to information. But my friends, yes, I'll let you, I'll end with this. For those of you that have been able to listen to this entire podcast or watch this on YouTube, you already see John's passion. You know that he's for real. You know that he's donated his own money and he's made this work. And a lot of us are benefiting from it. So I would say 100%, this blue collar tech nerd friend of ours that we love, let's support this gentleman and everything that he's doing and his company. So please find it in your heart to make a donation and so we can continue to keep this alive and then continue it to grow. So that way more and more people can actually benefit from this as well. So John, thank you very much for joining us. And I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for squeezing us in and appreciate the time, my friend.
Thanks, OP. Really appreciate what you're doing here and informing the world about how to prepare and live with what's happening.
Boom. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Much appreciated.
That's all for this episode of All Things Wildfire. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media to stay up to date on All Things Wildfire. And as always, thanks for listening.